Have you ever uttered the words, "It is what it is," out of frustration, contentment, or defeat? Northeast Delta Human Services Authority has a new radio show entitled, "It Is What It Is," with co-host and executive director, Dr. Montez A. Sizer. The show is moderated by co-host and public information director, Tennille T. Terry. It Is What It Is will address the individual systems we all encounter while journeying through life, be it mental, emotional, physical, or social. This show gives perspective on navigating the process of being and becoming your best self, because when it's all said and done, it is what it is. Tune in every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Good morning, and happy Friday, March 2nd. Welcome to March. It is what it is. We are back with another segment. I'm your co-host, Tennille T. Terry, along with co-host Dr. Montez A. Sizer. Good morning, Dr. Sizer.
Good morning, Tennille Terry.
How are you this morning?
I am doing great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And good morning to all of you that's listening via radio or via online. It Is What It is a show that gives voice. We seek to give a new outlook on everyone who's journeying through life, whether you're battling and seeking to overcome challenges that's related to poverty, mental illness, addiction, developmental disabilities, and so many other things. It Is What It is a platform that we have open dialogue to give perspective and different outlooks on life and the things that we do go through and journey through. So today's topic, it is segment 4, and today's topic is navigating differences. Navigating differences. We always like, before we begin the show, we like to go ahead and define the word, because sometimes in life we just get so used to using a word or a phrase or expressions that we don't really think of the meaning sometime. And so let's just start off with defining the actual word, differences.
Well, this is a powerful topic this morning, and what I like to do is not use a traditional definition of difference.
Okay.
But I'll define it as such: the other, or something that's not you.
The other, or something that's not you. Okay.
And the reason I'm doing that is we're setting the stage for what's to come with this program, and I'm excited about some of our staff members coming on to talk about some things we're doing to help transform the lives of so many others. And so I wanted to start with that definition so that it sets the context or framework by which we discuss what we're going to discuss.
Sure, absolutely. The others, and we will have some staff calling in on the second half of our show from Northeast Delta Human Services, and we'll be talking about differences as well a little more. We'll get more in depth on that part. But as we start the first half of the show, since Dr. Sizer has already defined it in a different way, pun intended, huh? You saw what I did there?
I saw that.
The other, something different. So identifying differences.
Well, that comes with recognition that we are different, people are different, situations are different. And so with that recognition then comes, hopefully, understanding. So when what we are seeking to be an outcome is not what we get, we can consider that the situation may be similar, but because people are different, the outcomes can be equally as different. And so hopefully this show will give perspective to, well, just because we are people, that doesn't necessarily mean the outcomes will be the same for each individual. Because we are different, circumstances can be different, and when you sort of fuse the people with the environmental circumstances, oftentimes you get some similar outcomes, but you also get some outliers or some differences.
Absolutely. So even in identifying differences, we can all, if we just think about our lives, we can identify differences when it comes to family, siblings, friendships, gender, work life, roles, race. There's so many variances when it comes to different things. We're both co-hosts. I happen to be female. You happen to be male. There's a gender difference there. So differences and having the outcome be different. That's moving into differences, and we're more alike than we realize. And I know that when you think about, and that from a psychology background, Dr. Sizer, when you think about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs and human needs, when we look at certain things, we all are different in so many different ways, but certain things there are the same that we just need, just human needs, like our physiological needs, air and water and food and shelter.
And you are correct from the standpoint that, yes, living beings will need food and water, but the amount varies.
Yeah.
You're correct to say that we need shelter, but the type of shelter varies.
Yeah.
You see, that's what's unique about us. It's no doubt that we have some commonalities because we are human beings, but the types and the kinds and the nuances associated with what we need to be fulfilled varies, even though we have a similar set of needs. Absolutely. As you identified.
Absolutely. So there's definitely variance in needs. And if you're listening right now, and if you have a question or a comment that you'd like to make and you'd like to call in, you can call in by dialing 318-324-1500. Again, that number is 318-324-1500. In identifying differences, you have to first make a clear distinction. It's making a clear distinction.
Certainly you do, but I think that, you know, when I define difference as the other, all you have to do is look around to recognize that everywhere you look, you don't see yourself.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look within your own families. You recognize that you have, if you're still blessed, you will have a mother or father or some sort of relative, and those individuals are not you. If you happen to be in the workplace, if you look around, you see a coworker and not yourself. Although we can superimpose our own values and perspectives on other people, and when then they don't act the way we think they ought to, we can get disappointed or frustrated. So in a sense, we acknowledge there's a difference, but at the same time, we can project our own values and wishes and desires onto someone else. And again, when they go contrary to that, then we get disappointed. And so recognizing difference and recognizing how we superimpose ourselves on that difference sometimes can create a challenge.
Absolutely.
This is why this program is important to talk about this morning.
So even before we get to that point of superimposing on others, then it will be safe to say that one needs to identify within themselves the differences or the variances and their potential needs or the level of those needs. You just said that we all need different things or the same things that we need. We need different amounts of those things. So then it first would have to start with that person identifying how much of what they need or how much capacity do they have for these individual things.
That's correct. And now we're getting at the basis of most human relationship challenges, because it's not being able to be sure about what we need for ourselves and from others. Again, that super, imposing on someone else what we think they should know about what our needs are.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, too, there could be an exploitation of difference. Oftentimes, there are people who see somebody that's different from them, and they are not sure. And because they're not sure or certain, then it could be anxiety-provoking. And then people will typically seek to understand, or they can seek to fear. And if you got somebody stoking the fire and creating a narrative for what's different, then you can see how gaps and you can see how divisive that could be.
Yeah. In recognizing those differences, then once you're aware that there's a difference, so that there isn't a negative connotation with that difference or any biases coming out of that, then it's important that first knowing yourself and then understanding or looking at how much knowledge do you know about what's different so that you're not being biased towards an individual or a system or policies.
Right, and it's also important to note that one's individual experiences with somebody that's different, what they have been told or taught about somebody who's different, what policies and what procedures are in place to help reinforce difference that's good or reinforce difference that's bad. And then what other meta-narratives are out there that can influence a person's perspective relative to somebody who they perceive to be different. All of these things are out in the atmosphere that help shape and mold how we think about those who are different. All we have to do is think about the challenges that we face in this country or in this world. All we have to do is think about the challenges that certain populations have to face because of what somebody said about their difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to actually go on to, we have a caller, our first caller of the day, Daniel. So let's go ahead and patch Daniel through. Good morning, Daniel. You're on with It Is What It Is with myself, Tanil T. Terry, and Dr. Montek A. Siza. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I can't complain.
Wonderful. It wouldn't do you any good if you did complain, Daniel. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Baton Rouge.
Oh, perfect. Baton Rouge is in the house. All right, Daniel, what's your comment or your question?
Oh, well, I've been listening, and I had a comment, and I had a question wanting to get your perspective, and Dr. Sizer as well. I heard that the conversation was about just in general parameters and people understanding of relationships and needs. I have a little bit different perspective, and I wanted to get your take on that. I think that part of what we've experienced in this society is that we all have base needs, as the conversation was saying a while ago, but I think that at some point individuals' self-awareness or their want for their self-needs supersedes what our base needs are. So I can't myself want a big house if the person next to me is homeless. And that's my personal feel. I think that we do have base needs, but that we allow our personal goals to get there. I wanted your thoughts and comments on that. If you think that that's a bigger portion than the actual structural relationship itself.
Interesting perspective, Daniel.
What I'll say to that, certainly we appreciate you calling and weighing in. We value and honor that. What you have just said is to reinforce the point that that's your difference. That is how you perceive the situation to be. And for you, what you said is important for you. And that's important, and that should be honored because that's your perspective, that's your truth. But for someone else, as you identified, it could be something totally different. And so being able to recognize that people have differences in terms of what their purpose is, what they value, what they don't value, what they like, what they dislike, and what they own. And so it's navigating and negotiating all of those differences that can create some harmony or disharmony. And again, all we have to think about when it comes to difference in a very relational sense is look at the laws we've had in Monroe, in this state, in this nation, in this world, relative to different types of situations and people and differences. So what I'm saying is that sometimes laws and images and perspectives and research and all these things can help shape and formulate how people think about differences. And so differences are just that, differences. But that understanding of differences and our willingness to work around to forge something that is good, that's universal and beneficial to as many as we possibly can is where the challenge is, and I think where the value and where the harmony is, if you will.
Yes, so Dr. Sizer, I agree with many of your points, but I was hoping to go a little bit deeper, if I may pose it in a different way.
Sure.
I'll go back to the point you were saying about differences. I maybe expressed it inadequately. If you have a population A and population B, and population A, like you said, has a difference. Population B looks at that difference as beneath or less than. But I believe that our society has evolved because in the past I identify more with our older citizens, our senior citizens, and they had a commonality regardless of community or type of I respect this next man for this next man at its base level. I know this man needs food, needs shelter. He has basic needs. I think that is the chasm that has been created because no longer do we have that understanding of each other. And that's what I was speaking more to. Have we lost that in this society?
Yeah, I think I got what you're saying. But what I will say to that is, and certainly that is a narrative that is common relative to people having to share and people had to give because of the environmental circumstances. Now remember, there were circumstances that created that familiarity and the need for people to work together, to come together, to share, to share food. If they killed the hog, they shared the meat, or these types of things. But I would say though that that's not everybody's reality. It's a large segment of our population's reality, and it may not be consistent across groups and ethnicities, although it could be. So what I'm saying is, this is what I'm saying. Every narrative, every conversation, every reality is not everybody else's reality, although there can be some commonalities within and between groups of people.
Yes, sir, but is there not as humans a base reality that we all have to accept? And that's what I'm saying. If I can't accept, like say for instance, if you and I were together, if I can't accept that if I eat all the food, you die, you starve. If I can't accept that at a base, is there a level as a human base that we are neglecting? That's
oh, absolutely.
What I'm saying.
And that's what's been the challenge since human beings have existed. Because all you have to do is look through the channels of history, and you will see where there's evidence of people coming together to resolve those differences as you're mentioning. And at the same time, there are many, many examples of people who are exploiting and intentionally taking from one and giving to the other, and starving one and ingratiating and eating for themselves. So it's not one or the other. Life and history is consistent with all of those different narratives because they play out in every society, in every phase in time and history.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate your perspective, Dr. Sizer. To know you all, I'll be listening in. I might call back in again. It's been an interesting morning.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and we appreciate you calling in.
Thank y'all so much.
No problem. Differences. So we're talking about differences this morning, navigating differences, distinction, variance, contrast, variation, deviation, contradiction, divergence, disparity, and Dr. Sizer defined it as the other or something different. We also have another caller on the line, and it's Bishop Emery. Good morning, Bishop Emery.
Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Terry and Dr. Sizer. Certainly enjoying the subject matter that you all are discussing this morning, and just thought I'd just call in and chime in a little bit. I tell you what, I'm just being blessed just listening to what you guys are talking about as it relates to navigating differences. I'm a pastor here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and so I hope you guys don't mind me coming from the pastoral or spiritual standpoint of view this morning on this subject matter. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Sure.
Come on in.
Okay. I want to just read this is a scripture in Romans, the 12th chapter. The Apostle Paul was writing to the church at Rome, and he says, "For I say through," this is Romans 12:3, he said, "For I say through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to be soberly according to, as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, So we being many are one body in Christ, and everyone members one of another. Verse 6 says, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, where the prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith. Then he goes on and on ministry and so on and so forth. But I love that part where he says, having then gifts differing according to the grace. Grace then becomes that thing that causes us to understand, because we don't all have the same grace, but we have grace based on the measure or the scope of authority that God has given us to operate in the earth realm. So I have a definition that I teach as it relates to difference, and it says this. And Dr. Sizer, I heard you saying a moment ago about honoring, that we need to honor difference. And this definition says that honor is the willingness, one of the definitions of honor is the willingness to recognize difference rather than to expose weakness. And I think that what has to happen as a people, we have to realize that we all are different, and God has given us different graces to operate in the measure that he's given us. And the key to being successful in life is being able to honor and recognize the difference in another person's life so as not to encroach upon who they are and vice versa. So, I mean, this just blesses me so much because I teach at a Bible college, and I teach concerning honor and the culture of honor, how to create a culture of honor amongst one another. And I think that if races and if people groups, if ethnic groups could honor the difference in each one of those groups, we could live in harmony and really see God move and cause us to have the peace that we need to have in this earth dimension. So this blesses me so much. I'm really being blessed by what you all are talking about this morning.
Well, certainly, we're glad that you called, and we appreciate your perspective, and we encourage other listeners to also call in. And let me just add a few things. There was a reason why Paul had to say what he said, because he saw people doing contrary.
Yes.
And so there's a reason why we've had all of these atrocities in the world, because people did to the contrary. Yes. You identified a framework by which if people operationalized themselves or abided within, then perhaps we could have a more beloved society. And so that's embracing differences, recognizing that all the differences came from one source.
Yes.
Pressed down, shaken together to form a more perfect, beloved society. And so what we're saying here by the topic of this program is this. All differences are not good. All differences are not bad. It's how you think about those differences.
That's right. That's
right. And then there are people superimpose their own desires, aims, and wishes, and then they create narratives, laws, images, stories to socialize and shape perceptions of people. So when people see somebody that's perceived different, they revert back to what they have been taught and what they have known. Yes. This is why young children can see and play and interact with each other with no issue. Right. It's only when they start to grow and start to become part of the world and go in and out of different systems and hear different conversations and see different images that their perspective on people starts to change.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying here is that they're not born into the world with these biases and these major conflicts around differences.
That's right.
They are socialized into seeing difference as being negative. And this is what we've got to counteract, and this is why we're having this show this morning.
Dr. Sizer, that's so powerful. You realize this when like you said a moment ago, when children can play together no matter what color they are. They don't even see the difference in the color when they're kids. They just want to play. They just want to have fun. And then, as you said, I often tell people this: racism and racial bias is usually taught. Kids they're not just born hating or despising one another. People, we teach them these biases, and we grow into these biases by different experiences, and then we began to, because as I said, as Paul said, he said, so we being many are one. We being many, we're different, but we're still one race. We're still one. We're the human race.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and although we're different shades, different colors, come from different cultures, different backgrounds, but we're still one race. And then to even make that greater, once we become born again, now we're part of even a greater, the Christian race, rather than just my color, the shade of my skin. But now we become one in who God is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are many variations of each discipline, each tradition, each, walk, if you will. And what I mean by that is this. I mean, so if you take a tradition, there's differences within the tradition.
Yes.
You identified Christianity, but look at all the differences and nuances and practices within Christianity.
Yes.
Then you can identify the Jewish faith. You can identify the Shintoism and Confucianism and Zoism and Taoism and all these other different isms. These are different traditions that different societies have embraced to bring out what they believe is spiritual and help them get on a quest of peace, tranquility, and success and purpose. And so there are many different variations of difference relative to a set of people's, a set of understandings or experiences that people would have based on where they're from and what they have been taught and what they have come to know and what they embrace as a path for them. And so there are all kinds of differences. As a matter of fact, there are differences within one's own journey. And this is what I mean.
Yeah.
There are developmental phases that all of us go through, but they're different phases because we're different people. But the development is going to be consistent no matter who we are. In other words, you're born into the world, and then you go from a child, infant. You grow through your teenage years, you go through your adult years, and so forth. Now, everybody doesn't necessarily make it to that type of the whole phase of human growth and development, because some people die, some people have accidents and the like. But the point I'm making is that even if you think about who you are today compared to 10 to 15 years ago,
right?
If you're the same person you were 15 years ago, there's a problem.
Absolutely. And even if you look at it, even where you are today, you're still different. It depends on the role that you're in at the time. Well, let's take the both of you, Bishop Emery and Dr. Sizer. You're both men, and Bishop, at your church, you're the bishop, but at home, you're a husband and a father. Same thing with you, Dr. Sizer. At Northeast Delta Human Services Authority, you're the executive director, but when you're home, you become a husband, and the husband is different than the father. As well as when you're speaking with your parents, you're a son, so we have different roles even at this point in our life. Everything is always changing, and we're always changing roles. We're putting on one hat for another hat as we journey through life, even just our day-to-day life.
Yeah, and if you also add to that, as you interact with different people, you have a different set of experiences based on how you think about those people in relation to those various roles you mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And Bishop Emery, we'd like to thank you so much for calling in. And you said you're calling in from Baton Rouge?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thank you so much. I'll keep listening. I'll sign off now. I'll keep listening at you guys, but you're doing a wonderful job. I'm really blessed and really enjoying the broadcast this morning.
Thank you so much. It seems like all of our friends in Baton Rouge are joining in here.
Thank you, and call again.
Baton Rouge is on the map this morning with It Is What It Is, and we're going to take a quick break right there, and we'll be back with more of It Is What It Is, navigating differences.
You're listening to Northeast Delta Human Services Authority radio show. It Is What It Is, with Tanil T. Terry and Dr. Monte A. Sizer.
Northeast Delta Human Services Authority manages the operation of community-based programs to improve the quality of life for individuals with major mental illness, developmental disabilities, and addictive disorders.
we utilize a nationally recognized integrative approach that identifies and addresses both behavioral and primary health care needs.
Our agency operates through collaboration with regional partners in business, prevention, education, and care throughout Caldwell, East Carroll, West Carroll, Ouachita, Lincoln, Madison, Franklin, Morehouse, Jackson, Tensas, Richland, and Union parishes.
Northeast Delta HSA is devoted to delivering programs and services that encourage citizens of Northeast Louisiana to reach their full human potential.
3 tenets guide these efforts: excellent customer service, greater access to services, and competent quality care.
For more information, visit our website at www.nedeltahsa.org.
Excuse me, I know you have a 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. I'm the business suit in the back of your closet. You wore me nearly every day before your office went, quote, casual. I used to be the CEO of your closet. Now I'm just that one intern no one ever talks to. I always thought you'd circle back with me, get granular, keep me in the pipeline. But nada, nothing. Don't you remember the McKittrick presentation? You spilled coffee on me, and I still looked amazing during the breakout talkback Q&A. So I think it's time for me to move on. I've got a great resume, and I absolutely crush it in interviews, okay? Let's make this a clean break. Shift the paradigm. The only thing I ask is that you think outside the box here and do this. Take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Are you or someone you know struggling with mental health issues such as depression, severe mood swings, hallucinations, or emotional problems from a traumatic life event? At Northeast Delta HSA, we are inspired to catalyze and transform the lives of Northeast Louisiana citizens in our 12-parish region through outpatient mental health counseling, medication management, and outpatient services for addictive disorders. To find which of our 7 clinic locations is nearest you, simply visit our website at www.nedeltahsa.org or call us toll-free at 1-800-256-2522. That's 1-800-256-2522.
Don't you know how much it hurts when we don't talk, when we don't touch, when it doesn't feel like we're even in love? It matters to me when I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, I don't know if it really even matters to you. How can I make you see it matters to me?
And we're back with more of It Is What It Is, navigating differences. It matters to me. So I have dangers of differences, the dangers of differences. So when they turn into bias, that could be a danger of a difference. And with the bias, then that means there's influence on a particular way or a particular thing.
This is true, and this is why, again, this program is so important, because, difference can take on various forms. Difference can be positive, difference can be negative, depending on how you construct a set of realities and set of outcomes based on that difference. And so what we're saying and hoping to do today is to recognize, or have our listening audience recognize, that differences are just that. But that doesn't make them good. It doesn't make it bad. It is what it is. But it's what we do with them that really distinguishes the outcome for a person, and that matters the most. So is it a positive outcome based on the differences or a negative one? And are those differences structurally, created to have a certain type or segment of people end up in a certain way because of the biases that we have internalized to create an outcome, and then we justify what we see when people do something different from us.
And on that note, Go ahead and finish your thought, Dr. Sizer.
And then we create further narratives and say, well, that's what they do because that's what I see. And so, in other words, we oftentimes don't see the structure and the policies and the things that help shape and mold because, see, people will act out what they believe about themselves and their differences.
Interesting. And in that, at this time, I'd like to bring on our special guest this morning. We have Director of Developmental Disabilities at Northeast Delta Human Services Authority, Jennifer Purvis, along with Michelle Conti, from Northeast Delta Human Services Authority, the Medical Certification Specialist Supervisor. Good morning, Jennifer. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you ladies doing this morning?
Oh, we're doing great today, thanks.
Wonderful. So we're discussing navigating differences, and I know you ladies know all about differences when it comes to developmental disabilities.
Yes, we do. We see a large group of folks who just want to have opportunities like everyone else and explore their differences and the things in which they're alike with those of us who are working and living our lives as well.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening, and just in case if they didn't catch our show last week and we had on Partners in Employment, we had Pi on talking about developmental disabilities. If we could, Jennifer or Michelle, would you just kind of tell us what developmental disabilities are?
Sure. I think it's easiest to say that there are a couple of simple points might bring you to us for any needs, or if you feel that you or someone that you know has a developmental disability. One of those being that the disability to meet our criteria has to have occurred before a person turns age 22. Certainly things happen beyond that, but in our area of work, we look for people who have that disability that occurred before age 22 that is very likely to continue indefinitely. In other words, pretty much a lifelong need system to support you in doing the things that you need in areas such as your self-care, mobility, communication, the things that you just need to get through life and daily needs and self-care type things. And if those things are something that are going on with someone that you know or a family member or your loved one, we would certainly encourage you to call and let us do an even further assessment so that we could see if you do meet that criteria or if we need to help you find another agency that supports your level of need.
Okay, so with developmental disabilities, they could be mental, they could be or physical disabilities.
Absolutely. Just some examples might be, of course, someone who has an intellectual disability, but often we see things such as people who have cerebral palsy, someone who maybe has muscular dystrophy. Again, most of this being dependent upon, or of course being dependent upon the onset for that, but people have various types of disabilities. There could be a birth injury, there could be car accidents, there could be physical limitations only, where someone has been involved in a car accident, diving accident, things such as that, that have caused them to have some limitations in their mobility that would possibly qualify them for services.
And when you say services, what type of services are available for those with developmental disabilities?
There's a variety of programs, and that's what's important for us to help people to understand what services they're going to most benefit from. But most of all, the most important thing, as Jennifer said, is come in, let people know that they can come in and call and get an assessment, and then someone from one of our units will help them determine what services can benefit them in their home. And then through our family support services, a lot of folks get services more quickly. But if our big service system is are the waiver services that we have for folks with developmental disabilities and their families, and those services greatly benefit people to help them to stay in their homes and in their communities and be a part of their communities here in Northeast Louisiana.
For those who may be listening and they are interested in finding out the eligibility criteria for these types of services, where can they find that? Or let's just talk a little bit more about the eligibility.
Sure. We have an entry unit, is what we call it, and that is our eligibility unit where we have staff that someone can call into our office, and I can share that number with you if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Yes, that is 318-362-5188. And if they'll just contact that number, they can ask for someone to assist them in applying for services, and they'll direct you to one of our professionals that will set up a time. There will be a face-to-face meeting where we'll gather information, talk about the issues that they feel make them eligible and help define what those things are. And then also as part of that process, identify what are their needs. What is it that they're looking for that will assist them in their day-to-day lives, and that work with them to then put them in the appropriate area of our office once eligibility is determined. If we find someone doesn't meet our criteria, it's really important to us to not just say, sorry, you're not eligible for us, bye. We really, really want to try and help connect people to the appropriate resources. And if we're unable to meet those needs or they don't necessarily meet our criteria, it's part of our process that we certainly try to point them in direction into the agencies that can assist them, depending on where they are. So we like to meet people where they are and their needs.
And what I'd like to share is this. For those who are listening, what you've heard is that the category of developmental disability varies to very significant degrees. In other words, you heard Jennifer Purvis and Michelle Conti talk about the various types of developmental disabilities. You also heard them talk about ways in which those needs are assessed. You also heard them talk about programs and services to help meet those needs based on the assessed needs of a person who comes into the office for screening and services. All of that is also nested within various systems, laws at various levels of government. So therefore, even if you have an issue, know that it's tangled up in one's personal challenges, one's family challenges, organizations, services, policies, laws, and all of this helps to shape the outcome for a person in need of services. And so it takes people and organizations and families to want to do something different to specifically meet a set of needs for a group of people, recognizing that those needs vary, they're different, and complex. And so therefore we have to do things in different ways in order to meet the various differences that I heard Jennifer Purvis and Michelle Conti just talk about.
So with those differences, if you're listening and you want to know more about eligibility criteria or would like to learn more about the services that Northeast Delta Human Services Authority provides, you can visit the website at www.nedeltahsa.org. Again, that is www.nedeltahsa.org. I know speaking offline with both Jennifer and Michelle, the question has been raised quite a bit with clients who come in who may be concerned with if they receive Medicaid, if Medicaid will affect their benefits or affects whether or not they'll be able to receive services from the agency.
Yes, Neil, that is a great question and a great point, and we'd really like to address it. There are folks that do qualify for Medicaid already. There are certain services and supports that are built in that are designed to help children with developmental disabilities. Those were built in several years ago through what's called the EPSDT services, through KidMed. And those services are crucial to folks that have a child with a developmental disability. Oftentimes, though, we have families, because developmental disability, to have a child with a developmental disability doesn't really fall into a socioeconomic status. I mean, anyone that any of us can experience that. And so lots of times we do have folks that don't qualify for Medicaid initially because of a financial resource or their income. But when they do come up for the waiver program, that is one program that does not count income, parental or family income, against a person when they do apply for Medicaid through that service. So while there is some time, that's not an immediate service that most people get, but coming into our service system, that's something we try to help people understand and explain that that's something that they may get eventually. But we do want folks to know that, you can qualify for Medicaid through the waiver, that your resources are not counted against you at that time. It's, mainly family support also. Let me bring back to that state, that program, because we have so much to share. It's hard to do it in a small segment. But the family support program doesn't count income either. That is a funded program through what we call Act 378 that our legislators actually put together to help families in need as they wait for services, like services through the waiver. So those don't count against folks for their income either, and that's a more immediate support that people can receive if they're in crisis and they contact our office.
So just to give the listeners an example and to make the connection for types of services that they may be in need of, if they're on the waiver waiting list and that may be covered under that act that you just spoke about, 376, with family support services. So if a family if they have a child who's maybe on a ventilator or have some type of disability, and now the electricity bill, where it used to be maybe $100 monthly, it has gone up tremendously, maybe double or even triple that. So that's something that could these services could help out with, maybe assistance with electricity bills or daycare, adult daycare, things like that.
Possibly so. Those are some examples. Just to clarify too, that we serve people from age 3 and up. And so while we kind of have talked some about children, I want to be clear that we do assist people with disabilities who are adults as well. And some of the things that are covered in that Act 378 monies that could possibly be covered, so many times families just want to do things as families. And there may be a need, just an example that has come up before, a young man who had some issue with being around a lot of people, made him very, very anxious. But yet there was another child in the home who played ball, and so he was at the ballpark almost every night. And so parents were having to take turns going to the child's ball games versus one needing to be home with the other child who doesn't really like crowds. And we were able to give them some relief of having someone come into the home and care for the child who didn't want to attend, so that they both could go and be a part as a family of supporting the other child that was playing ball. Sometimes parents just need a break. Sometimes we can have someone come in and give them a little relief, maybe take the person to go and do some things, teach some independence skills, a variety of things, modifications to a home. Yes, as you mentioned, sometimes there are some extraordinary circumstances in which a bill becomes due that has become a huge problem for the family, and they're about to be evicted. While we certainly can't maintain any ongoing types of payment for electricity and so forth, we could help them in those situations to get kind of ahead and start and get back on the right track with their home and their housing. Because, again, keeping people together, keeping families where they want to be, keeping people involved in their community and engaged in their community, everyone is different, as y'all talked about, and everyone's priorities are different for their families. And so we try to take a very individualized approach to meeting those needs. And some of the things that I just mentioned are just an example of things we could consider.
Absolutely. You guys are doing great things with this particular department and the services that are being provided. And just another time, Jennifer, if you give that number out, if someone's local or they'd like to get more information to directly be able to contact you guys.
Absolutely. If they'd like to come to the office, their location for entry unit for applications is at 3200 Concordia here in Monroe. That's just off of Louisville Avenue. And the phone number there is, again, 318-362-5188.
You can also
just ask for someone to talk to them about services. They'll be happy to help.
And also you can visit online at www.nedeltahsa.org, www.nedeltahsa.org. For the listeners, what's the coverage area? Who are the services available to?
We cover all of Northeast Louisiana in the 12-parish region. That means all the way to Arkansas, all the way to the river, over just beyond Ruston and down into Tensall Parish. So all of the entire Northeast Delta area is our coverage area. And again, if someone were to call and they're not in our area, we will connect them and get them involved with the area that does cover their needs. So we invite folks to call us, let us share some of the things that we can provide, and let them tell us what it is that their needs are, and come together and work towards the common goal.
Absolutely. I know that you spoke about there are some markets that you'd like to actually be saturated in, and to just get the information out there. And so with schools and school administrators, even letting them know the services that are available.
Yeah, oftentimes, Tennille, we find, and even with early intervention, and early intervention has been a huge part of getting kids involved in our system at an early age, but we still find that people are in school and don't know about us, and they may be receiving some special services in school, or they may receive some special assistance there in the classroom. And we really would love for our school systems and our educators out there to know that anyone can refer someone to our office. So if there's a teacher out there that has a child in their classroom and they're thinking, this child may be in need of some services that are different than what, to help their family at home, we would encourage them to please have that parent call our office. Or that teacher can call our office and get additional information to share with that parent. Young adults that are transitioning, oftentimes they're just hearing about us for the first time. Those kids that are getting ready to graduate from high school and wondering what they're going to do next. Not everybody goes to college, and not everybody goes on to do, to training school or something different, or something of that nature. They may need a different option. Something like some vocational training, or finding a way for them to get marketable, employable skills, and that's something that is very important, and the PIE project is going to lead us in that direction, and that's what's really exciting, is because we've got, some ways now to really work with transitioning those young adults into the adult world, into a workforce, into opportunities that they may have not had before.
Go ahead, Dr. Sizer. You can wrap us up.
Yeah, I just want to add that these things just didn't happen. They happened because we recognized variation or differences. We recognized that we needed to be flexible in terms of how we engaged around difference. And as a consequence, we start doing things differently to reach people in a way that's specific to their individual needs. And as a consequence, that sort of spawned innovation. But I also want the listening audience to know that even what we are doing is limited by structural policy and resources. And so while we have heard and said some wonderful things today, we still have to learn how to navigate multiple systems in order to reach a desired